Well, good morning. Trinity Sunday is the Sunday after Pentecost Sunday and the entryway into this long season of all things ordinary, where the work of the church has time to settle in and take root. The color of the season of Pentecost is green. Green, which is the reminder for growth. We have been given this time to grow in our faith, and in the wisdom of the church, this season is really long. For a reason. Growth takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. In fact, we won't see another color change in the church until Advent, right before Christmas, when we begin to prepare for the arrival of Jesus. So I think it's important to acknowledge where we are in the life of the liturgical cycle right now. Again, it's time to settle in, take root. It's time to grow in our faith. We have space in order to do that. It is time to do the work that God has given us to do. As well as in the wisdom of the church, we aren't given this task without help. Last week, we celebrated Pentecost, when the Spirit in a holy hurricane swept over Jerusalem. The disciples dared to breathe in this holy hurricane, and when they did, they were made apostles, and so ushered in a new way. The early church was born, and the work of Jesus was continued through regular folks. So, that example of how the Spirit came to the early church is still true for us today. The same Spirit that was inhaled and given to the apostles is also what is given to us. And before we begin this long season of ordinary time, we first remember that we have the same Spirit that will gently walk with us and guide us through this long season. It will also empower us to do the work that God has given us to do, to enliven us, to remind us we are never, ever alone in the walk of faith, to ensure us that this season of growth only happens because the Spirit is directing us. As our gospel reminds us this morning, when the Spirit of truth comes, He will guide you into all truth. Well, some might be thinking, well, that's all well and good, but what does that mean for me today? Does the Spirit really still speak to me in my life? Well, I will say the same Spirit that the disciples breathed in on the day of Pentecost is the same Spirit that you were given on the day of your baptism. You too have it in you. I have it in me. We are all being guided by a presence that is much, much bigger than ourselves. This presence that comes and stills your mind, your heart and soul when feeling overwhelmed. One that prompts you to love when you just don't want to. One that guides you to a church named Grace week in and week out. One that allows you to serve your neighbors in the blazing heat, sweating, sticky hands. This is how you know the Spirit is with you. And this is the same Spirit that can be trusted and can be relied upon. The Spirit that brings to mind those folks that need our prayers, that need a note of encouragement, that need a smile, that need a hug, an acknowledgement of who they are. Because you, empowered by the Spirit of God, just might be the only one who could and who would offer it to them, giving them hope, sparking curiosity inside of them. Why is this person so kind to me? Why do they even care? Well, the Spirit of God empowers us to do those things that the world just doesn't engage in. The world has no interest in because the kinds of things that the Spirit seems to engage in frankly, just aren't glamorous. They really are quite ordinary. So ordinary that there isn't any reason to call attention to them, except for the fact that they really aren't ordinary at all. In fact, they are truly extraordinary for those receiving what has been given. For them, these kind acts, these acknowledgments of their own humanity are reminders of hope in the midst of desert and bleakness. Well, if you have ever been to the office at Grace, you know that the practice of the office is that we have an open door policy. And when the weather is good, literally, the office doors are open all the time. For me, this is extremely important to have this posture of openness as I priest. It communicates availability and welcome. Yes, sometimes it invites disruption, it invites interruption, but that for me is just how ministry is. It's messy and dynamic. It shouldn't be static. And that for me keeps things interesting and exciting. But ultimately, I think what it does, it gives me and the others who come in and out of our office a chance to know our neighbors, to open our doors to the world, and to allow the world to be invited in. Well, because of this open door policy, I've had the opportunity to get to know many of our homeless and transient neighbors. They frequent the grounds of Grace for food, to use our warming station to heat their food, and when the weather turns hot, to receive cold water. One such man, Fred, comes to Grace several times a day. I've noticed that in the last 2 weeks, he comes in the late afternoon. He's usually pouring with sweat, red in the face, and just overall hot. He doesn't even have to ask anymore. I see him, wave to him, and then go straight to the refrigerator and grab 4 bottles of water for him. He smiles. He sits at the bench, which is right outside the office doors, and he drinks every single bottle, every last bit, one after another. And when he's finished, he comes to the window, waves, and mouths the words, "Thank you," and off he goes. This is also the same man who has 2 children who live in the apartments across the street from Grace. Our pavilion and picnic tables are where he has his visitation with his children. They sit underneath the pavilion in the heat, in the cold, in the rain, week in and week out, trying to connect. Often, he will stop by the office before his visit with Olivia and Braden, and if I have chocolate, I give it to him. It brings him a lot of joy to be able to offer something to his kids. It truly is the little things and the ordinary things that matter. And what I have seen over these months that Fred has come to Grace is that he trusts us. In the midst of his bleakness, Grace for him is a place of refuge. His humanity is known, it is acknowledged. He doesn't ask for much and is always so grateful for what he receives. This is just one example of how Grace, empowered by the Spirit, is making way for relationships to be reformed and healed. It's not just happening with the members of Grace, but also with our neighbors that frequent our campus. And for a man named Fred, living underneath the bridge in Alvin, we are home. So the Western Church has long held that the Trinity is symbolized by way of a triangle. But it is our brothers and our sisters in the Eastern Church who see the Trinity as a circle, a dancing circle of love and relationship, a union of togetherness that folds into one another, that flow from and with one another, that dance the divine dance together, that is ferociously in pursuit of relationship with one another, so that we, modern-day disciples, are also ferociously in pursuit of relationship with one another, with God, with our neighbors. And that is why I shared the story with Fred. We too are dancing because our triune God is dancing. The example has been set, and so we have to follow. And what it shows is that we truly are all so interconnected, dancing the dance of love and relationship with one another, pushing and pulling, ebbing and flowing, beautifully working out this way of being and staying connected with one another, God, each other, neighbor. Sometimes we two-step. Sometimes we waltz. Other times we jitterbug. We are all connected, dancing the dance. I had a friend recently say to me, Suzanne, I want to dance the rest of my life. And my response was, so do I. So do I. The life of faith is one dance after another, mirroring the dance of our triune God. So during this season of ordinary time, the season of all things ordinary, my prayer is that you will come to know that maybe, just maybe, it isn't so ordinary. Instead, you are being guided by a gentle spirit that is calling you to be open, to not be afraid, to come and dance, to dance the dance of love and relationship. So, dear people of God, what I would say is act accordingly. Assume a posture of openness. Be led by courage rather than fear. And trust that deep wellspring of goodness, God's Spirit, that was given to you on the day of your baptism. The same Spirit that is beckoning you to dance. And to breathe in these beautiful words. Father, pour out your Spirit on all of us. Fill us that we may speak your words, dream your dreams, dance your dance, see with your eyes, and go as your hands and feet into this great, big, beautiful world. Amen.